everybody. Welcome to the channel. This is the Tuesday version of the Free Will Burning podcast, which most of the time features the Accidental Expat segment about being an expat outside of the United States, living outside of the United States. I, of course, am the accidental expat in this example. I went someplace for a while. I didn't know how long, and that's been 6 years. And so I'm a resident now of Colombia in South America. I've lived here. I've lived for multiple places within just basically 2 cities. Now I live in the country outside of one of them. And so with that out of the way, I want to clear that up. I've seen some questions on some of these shorts about why I left. I didn't intend to. I'd been sick for 10 years. And while I was sick, I kept saying that if I lived through cancer and liver transplant and the other things that I had going on at the time, that I was going to go to Iceland. I had this dream. That was what kept me going, I've spoken about that in other videos here a few weeks ago, actually. The point in all that being that when I did get past those illnesses, it was COVID. And suddenly I couldn't even go to Iceland if I even had the means to get there, which I really didn't. But I saved and I had money, and then I decided to sell everything I had. And I did that. And I left with a backpack. And I went to Colombia, the first country that opened. Planned to be here for 3 months. Never left. I was on my way to Bulgaria next for the winter festivals, all that, the Christmas, the Krampus, all that. I was going to go there and I wanted to see all that live. That never happened. So long story short on that for those wondering, but we have a war. All right. We suddenly now have a war going on, and that changes things. I'm going to get some video going here at times you can watch, but, not in the cinematic sense. We're not going to be seeing, tanks go rolling down Main Street. I doubt we'll see ground. Who knows? We're not going to see draft notices coming into our mailboxes. But the sense, now that the United States has escalated military action against Iran is, when that kind of machinery gets going, the entire temperature of the earth goes up with it. You feel it in the markets. You'll see it in the headlines. Maybe you feel the tightness in the chest. Maybe it's freaking you out a little bit. Maybe you're excited about it for whichever reason. And even when you're standing in your kitchen just with, what the hell? And you're like, what now? What next? It seems like there's so many things going on. The other day I made a joke. I woke up Saturday morning to the United States bombing a country, and I didn't know if that was news or just another Saturday. And I do support the United States in all this. I'm not trying to bash the United States, but it's become almost commonplace. And then, we've talked here about, watching AI rearrange industries, while a lot of us are still paying for braces or still paying for kids' college or maybe college ourselves, or just figuring it out financially in whatever way. Either way you cut it, another escalation just is another reminder that stability shifts whether you consent or not. So let's be direct about this. If you react to war the same way you react to inflation, the same way you react to AI, the same way you react to the last election cycle, you're not responding to events. You're responding to a pattern in your nervous system. You're reacting. You're not responding, really. All right. There's a difference here. This is not an insult. It's diagnostic, actually. War is real. People die. It's been going on forever. Families fracture. Leaders make decisions in secure rooms. Young men go out there and fight them and absorb those consequences firsthand. But everybody feels it. All sides feel it. That holds a lot of gravity, and the fear of that spreads wide when you start seeing the blasts on TV, and then you see it move through the markets and the headlines, or group chats or people like me babbling about it online. Where's the truth in all this, and how you feel about it is up to you, but there's so much information, and it just seems it's another brick in the wall almost to go back to really what got some of this started with me. Anyway, I've talked about that album's impact on me when I was freshman in high school, I believe, when it came out in 1980, but we as Gen X, we know this terrain. We've been down this, we grew up under the Cold War. Some of us might have had nuclear drills, but we always knew that was a thing. By the time Red Dawn came around, that drilled it home to us, and so all this talk of mutually assured destruction, that was sort of the background sound to our childhood, but I don't recall ever really being freaked out by it. It was just a constant hum, but then the wall fell, shortly after I got out of the military, I was in the Army in the 80s. Right after that, the Berlin Wall fell down. Then came 9/11, and then the 2 long forever wars, as they started to be called, then a financial crisis, social media going crazy, then a pandemic, then AI. Now this, it's not complaining, it's recounting. We've been adapting for 40 years without certainty, but that's life. It's pretty hectic, though, you have to admit, but and you're also not asked. You're this is just the way it's going to be. You're enrolled in this, whether you sign the paperwork or not. And again, that's just life, and that's the way it's been for all generations. And we're not super special, but we're us, and so we can talk about it. It's been a hard road. We're living in one of the best times in the world, and we live in a country with so much opportunity. Despite how you feel about it, you got to admit you're not born in a better, yes, you can say, oh, if I was born in random Norway, sure, life would be great there. And I'm sure, I'm not trying to say other places are not nice, but being born in the United States, the amount of resources that are available to you, and that old school sort of American dream of you have the opportunity to go out and create something. And if other people find value in what you do, you're going to make some money at it some way or another. Weird, I know, having to put your sort of quasi purpose to money, but unless you're going to go fishing every day for long, and then build your house, and then you're not going to have any of these things, So that's again, that's the system we're in, and we get that. But all of this on our nervous system is what really starts to matter in this whole thing. And escape here, that's an emotion. Adaptation is more structural, more survival. If you're going to make a major life decision, which is something I talk a lot about here to get to that, people are, considering leaving the United States. And again, I'm not ever political about that. I think that's the worst reason for anybody to move, getting into a hissy fit basically over politics. Unless it's something where it's some kind of oppressive regime, but that's not going on in the United States. It hasn't been. So don't go there. I'm not buying that. So, and you shouldn't either, stick around. It could change. Look, every 4 years, things completely could change in the United States. You never know. The fallout's going to be there. Yeah. But I didn't leave the United States running from anything, and I still have children in the United States. My entire family's there. I feel like I'm there. I'm speaking to you in English. Everybody that watches this is English, with the exception of the people at the local tienda here near La Tabaida. If you're watching this, hola. I recently found out that people in the store that I go to near here have subscribed to the channel, so they're listening to English too. So, at any rate, there's our cultural what is it when you share? Anyway, I got sidetracked. But if you're 40, 45, I guess you have to be 45 or older to be Gen X. But I'm not trying to just speak only to Gen X here. But that 45 to 60 group, if you're in there, these are some very responsible years. He's going to make a lot of decisions, because it's not going to be as easy maybe to make decisions down the road as even it is now with these conditions. This might be as good as he gets, so to speak. And I'm not trying to say that somebody's political future, as far as like, the president's plan, or what about the next domain? That's the future. Let's talk about right now. You've got right now stuff. Whatever you have that. Start building, because right now is important. This is not a good time to sit on your hands. Because as we get older, and then, it'll just change everything for us. So this is not a time to fold the tent and run. To end my rant on when I talk about leaving the United States, I'm only saying if you do, because there are lots of expats I know here that did. They retired here because of affordability. They didn't, whatever. And that's fine. You can't judge somebody by where they choose to retire. These are all, they still vote. They're still American in every sense of the word, just because they have a different address, live around the corner, and they still pay in the U.S. We all do that. Every expat has to file taxes in the United States, regardless of where you make money in the world, just like everybody else. So, and that's a big sticking point in the expat community, that we don't have representation. Interesting thought. But, the big question here is, can we build a life with stability in it, given maybe going to a new place, adapting to it, or solidifying where we're at right now? That's a skill that we're going to have to develop, because again, this is not a time to sit around on your hands. You have to have a life that can withstand this kind of volatility. If you're like chasing environments, temporarily soothe it, that the world's never going to be destabilizing, because it changes every day. And that just, simply creates fear, when all is changing is the flavor of life. If peace depends on the news cycle behaving, your personal peace depends on that, you'll never have peace, because they're not going to sell you peace. They want you to watch the news. I'm not trying to bash the media, but you know what I'm saying. When's the last time you saw a whole day for the good news? That's because everything's so important, right? Right, exactly. So what's within your control? What's your skill set? What's your cost structure, your physical health, your debt load, relationships, discipline, What are your limiting beliefs? If we're going to go down the sort of my professional route where I would go there, this is test your agency. You really, if you want to move abroad, do it because it aligns with you long term. And even if you're staying where you're at, make sure you think long term right now as much as you possibly can, because you do know that the change is going to be constant. You're going to be in it each time, so your ability to adapt to it as you go along is going to be your best superpower. And at the end of the day, we only have ourselves. We have our communities, and it's very important that we have those around us like that. We have to have, I'm not saying isolation or anything like that, and I'm not blah, blah, blah. Though I do find a lot of value in that myself. Solitude, I call it. Alone time. And that's fine too. We can talk to ourselves without saying, oh, you're talking to yourself? Yes. Having a conversation with myself about what I'm doing, maybe calling myself out in healthy ways. Not trying to get too psychoanalytical here. That is my day job. And that's what I do all day on Tuesdays. Anyway, so that's all I got to say here. Don't book a flight just based on adrenaline. Don't declare allegiances or non-allegiances based on a headline. You be who you are where the world flexes. You flex right back, or you stay fluid. Free Will Burnout Podcast with my brother Troy. If you like this kind of content, please comment below or subscribe. I've been a counselor now for 11 years, and I speak to groups all the time. I've spoken to so many people about issues, but I want to speak particularly on a non-clinical like way with Gen Xers, people in my own, basically because somebody to talk to. There you go. Let's build our own community. Post on the posts. I post conversations anywhere. I really would love to hear back from anybody out there, even the people that have something. I've had some people say some less than favorable things. I think that's just probably a result of seeing a clip out of context, most likely. Now it doesn't mean I can't be that. If you think I'm a jerk, I'm a jerk. Anyway, we'll see you next time, man.